Checking up on my little cousin. Keep your hands off my stuff.
That shit.
Smash is my job, man. That's my stuff.
Yo, hey, little bitch.
Genji more Thao.
Hey there. What the hell happened to you?
Don't worry about it. I said don't worry about it, okay? It's not your problem.
Where's your cousin live?
I don't want you to do anything.
Hey.
Here's the deal. You can tell your friends to stay away from Thao. That's it. Take that as a yes. If I have to come back here, it's gonna get ugly.
In a quiet corner of Detroit, inside a modest Catholic church heavy with the scent of old wood and funeral lilies, a service is underway for a woman named Dorothy Kowalski. At the front pew sits her husband, a weathered Korean War veteran named Walt Kowalski, his jaw locked, his eyes fixed somewhere far beyond the casket. A man approaches to offer his condolences, but Walt, composed in grief the way only old soldiers know how, barely acknowledges him. Dorothy was the one person in this world who understood him, and now that anchor is gone. Seated nearby are his two sons, Mitch and Andy, along with his granddaughter and 3 grandsons, none of whom Walt seems to particularly recognize as family anymore. His granddaughter, dressed in a miniskirt and a revealing shirt that feels grotesquely out of place at a funeral mass, catches his eye, and a flicker of disgust crosses Walt's face before he looks away. Is there any moment sacred enough for this family to behave? Apparently not.
Jesus.
After the service, the mourners migrate to Walt's house for the reception, and the atmosphere inside turns noisy, cluttered with relatives Walt has no interest in entertaining. Wanting nothing more than silence, Walt slips away from the crowd and retreats to his garage, the one place in his life that still makes sense. But even here, his solitude is interrupted. He finds his granddaughter inside, caught red-handed smoking among his tools. Sitting in the garage, gleaming and untouched, is his prized 1972 Ford Gran Torino, a machine he built with his own hands on the assembly line. Eyeing the car with a boldness that borders on contempt, his granddaughter asks what he plans to do with it when he dies. Walt doesn't dignify the question with an answer. He simply turns and walks away, his silence louder than any rebuke. When Walt returns to the house, he's intercepted by a young priest named Father Janovich, who gently reveals that Dorothy was close to him in her final months. The late Dorothy had made a request of the young priest before she passed: look after Walt, and persuade him to make the confession he has avoided his entire life. Walt, unfazed and a little insulted, flatly refuses. He is not about to bare his soul to someone younger than his own sons. The priest is sent away with nothing but a dismissive grunt.
Wish I could help, Dad, but kids are getting restless.
Yeah, fine. Just go. Chose you to buy American.
Meanwhile, next door to Walt's house, a family of Hmong immigrants has moved in, and Walt, peering through his blinds, watches them with open displeasure. A young man named Thao lives there, quiet and bookish, and already looked down upon by his own family for being too obedient to his elder relatives. Walt wonders, not quietly, why these people have ended up in his neighborhood. To him, the block he once knew has been overrun. The next day, Thao walks alone through the neighborhood reading a book, entirely unaware that a car full of American gangsters has begun trailing him. They pull up, harassing him verbally, circling like wolves. Before anything escalates, another car appears from the opposite direction, this one carrying a Hmong gang, one of them being Thao's own cousin, Spider. The two groups descend into an argument for no clear reason beyond territory and pride, until one of the American gangsters pulls a gun. A Hmong gang member named Smokey, unfazed, calmly brandishes an Uzi, and the Americans, suddenly outmatched, back off and drive away. With the threat gone, Spider turns his attention to Thao, pressuring him to join the gang as a rite of passage. Thao, visibly uncomfortable, refuses. He doesn't like violence, and he doesn't want trouble. For now, Spider lets him walk, but it's only a matter of time. Later, while Thao is gardening in his family's front yard, Spider and his crew roll up again. This time, they won't take no for an answer. Thao's sister, Sue, is on the front terrace, watching with growing unease, but she steps inside the house as the cousins close in. Worn down by the relentless pressure, Thao finally agrees to join them. His initiation: steal the neighbor's Gran Torino. That evening, Thao creeps into Walt's garage, his hands trembling, every step a betrayal of his own nature. But Walt, a man whose instincts never left the battlefield, senses movement. Rifle in hand, he moves toward the garage with the quiet precision of a soldier clearing a room. The darkness hides Tao's face, but the sound of Walt's bluff sends the young man scrambling into the night. Thao escapes empty-handed. Outside, Spider and his gang wait in the car, and when Thao returns without the Torino, their disgust is palpable. Walt, unshaken, simply sets about reinforcing his garage so that no one ever tries such a thing again. The following morning, Walt receives a phone call from his eldest son. For a brief moment, Walt wonders if this might be something sincere, a check-in, a gesture of care. It isn't. His son is only calling to ask about Dorothy's jewelry. Seething quietly, Walt hangs up without a word, then retreats to his porch, where he sits staring at the Gran Torino parked in his driveway, the only thing in his life that still belongs to him. That night, Spider and his crew return once more to Tao's house, this time aggressive, physically pulling Thao off his porch as he sits silently in the yard. A commotion erupts as the rest of Tao's family pours out of the house, trying to separate them. The struggle spills across property lines, and before anyone realizes it, they've stumbled into Walt's yard. Walt, who has been watching the whole thing from his porch with the cold patience of a sniper, steps out with his rifle raised. He doesn't shout. He doesn't negotiate. He simply lets the barrel speak for him. Spider's crew backs away and retreats, and the Thao family, shaken but safe, tries to thank Walt for the intervention. Walt, repulsed by their gratitude, only growls that he wants them off his lawn. The next morning, Walt steps outside to find his yard covered in offerings, plates of food, potted plants, flowers. The Hmong community has shown up in waves to thank the gruff old man who ran off the gangster. Walt is baffled and irritated, insisting to no one in particular that he wasn't helping anyone, he just wanted people off his property. Soon after, Thao approaches the house with his mother at his side, and quietly, with his head lowered, apologizes for the attempted theft. Walt, unmoved, simply warns him that if he ever tries anything like it again, he won't hesitate to kill him. That same afternoon, Sue is walking with a friend toward the record store when they're confronted by a group of delinquents on the street. Sue, far from being intimidated, meets their harassment with defiance, which only escalates the delinquents' aggression. At that moment, Walt happens to drive by in his Gran Torino. He pulls up slowly, taking in the scene with a veteran's eye, and steps out. He gestures toward his pocket as if drawing a weapon, and the thugs laugh, underestimating him completely. Then, to their shock, Walt actually pulls out a real pistol and points it at them, icy and unbothered. He orders Sue into his car. As they drive, something unexpected happens. Sue makes small talk with him, and Walt, despite himself, responds. He's more relaxed than usual, and she, with her sharp wit, meets him right where he is.
What about that dimwit brother here?
Thao is actually really smart.
Yeah, poor Toad.
He just doesn't know which direction to go in. One girls over here fit in better. The girls go to college, and the boys go to jail.
A few days later, Walt is once again on his porch when he notices the elderly woman across the street struggling with her groceries. A group of youths passes by, and instead of helping, they mock her. Walt begins to rise from his chair, ready to intervene, but before he can, Thao sprints across the street and helps the old woman carry her bags inside. Walt watches, something softening behind his eyes. Moments later, Sue approaches and invites him to a barbecue at their house. Walt glances at his empty beer cooler, calculates, and accepts, telling himself it's only for the drinks.
Don't call me Wally.
At the gathering, Walt is welcomed warmly by Sue's family, all except the grandmother, who regards him with open hostility. Among the guests is a shaman, who quietly studies Walt from across the room. When the shaman finally speaks to him, his words cut deep. He tells Walt that a terrible mistake from the past still burdens him, that he has never been at peace. Disheartened and suddenly claustrophobic in the crowd, Walt excuses himself. Moments later, he begins coughing violently and retreats to the bathroom. When he looks down, he sees blood in the sink. The illness he's been hiding is no longer hiding. Sue knocks on the door, concerned, but Walt brushes her off, insisting he's fine. As he prepares to leave, Sue's mother stops him and explains that Thao intends to atone for the attempted theft by working for Walt or paying him money. The family insists it is a matter of honor, and that refusing would be an insult. Walt, reluctantly, agrees to take him on.
All right, what are you good at?
Like what?
You gotta work for me. I gotta know what you're good at.
I don't know.
See that tree right there? You just go over there and count the birds.
You want me to count the birds?
Yeah, you can count. All you slopes are supposed to be good at math, right?
Yeah, I can count.
Good.
At home, Walt's coughing worsens, and the blood keeps coming. Finally, he goes to the doctor, where he's told what some part of him already knew. He has a chronic illness, and his time is short. Shaken but stoic, Walt tries to reach out to his sons, one by one, hoping to mend something before the end. But his calls are met with distraction and impatience. His own children are too busy. Walt hangs up each time a little more alone. The next day, Thao begins his service. Walt puts him to work on everything: fixing roofs, uprooting trees, cleaning cars, lifting heavy loads, painting houses. Thao does it all without complaint, partly out of guilt, partly to stay out of the grip of Spider's gang, which still prowls the neighborhood. As Walt watches Thao work, he begins to see him clearly: a shy, low-esteem boy who has been beaten down by his own relatives and an unforgiving world. Moved by something he can't quite name, Walt decides this boy is going to become a man. He teaches Thao how to speak like one, how to walk like one, how to carry himself. He takes him to his old friend Tim Kennedy, a construction foreman, who agrees to hire Thao at his site. Within days, Thao is officially employed, earning his own money, his first real step toward dignity.
I really appreciate all this.
Forget it.
Thank you.
But redemption rarely goes unchallenged. Returning from work one evening, Thao steps off the bus and is immediately ambushed by Spider and his crew. They beat him, and in a moment of pure cruelty, one of them presses a lit cigarette into his cheek, making Thao cry out in pain. They destroy his work tools. Bleeding and empty-handed,
The phrase I'm looking for? Face.
Thao walks home in silence. Walt, driving through the neighborhood, spots him and immediately understands what has happened. Seething in anger, Walt drives straight to Spider's headquarters. Smokey is the only one home. Walt doesn't hesitate. He beats Smokey to a pulp, and before leaving, delivers a cold warning. If anyone touches Thao again, they're dead.
Here's the deal. Stay away from Thao, understand? That's it. I'll take that as a yes, because if I have to come back here, it's gonna get ugly.
But Walt has miscalculated. That night, as he sits in his living room, Spider's crew rolls past Thao's house and unloads a spray of bullets into the walls as a warning. Walt rushes over in a panic. Thao is grazed on the neck, but alive. The rest of the family is shaken but unharmed. Then someone realizes Sue isn't home. Thao frantically calls her friend, who tells him Sue left over an hour ago. The family waits, paralyzed with fear, the silence growing heavier by the minute. Then, from the darkness outside, they hear her, crying out in pain. They rush to the door and find Sue on the front step, beaten bloody, her body broken, her face a mask of trauma. She has been brutalized by Spider's gang in retaliation for Walt's beating of Smokey. Walt stands frozen, the weight of what his violence has caused crashing down on him. He turns away, unable to face them, and returns to his own house. Inside, Walt's emotions finally erupt. He tears his home apart, smashing things, destroying everything within reach, a lifetime of suppressed rage pouring out in a single night. When the storm inside him finally breaks, he goes to Father Janovich, and for the first time in his life, Walt confesses. He admits that during the war in Korea, he killed hundreds of men, some of whom were just boys, their hands in the air, trying to surrender. He has carried that weight every day since. And now, he tells the priest, he is about to carry out one more act of violence, not for revenge, but to save Thao and Sue's family from a cycle that will otherwise swallow them whole.
What are you gonna do, Walt?
I don't know. Whatever it is, they won't have a chance.
Back at the house, Walt invites Thao over. Together, they clean Walt's old rifle, and Thao, still raw with grief for his sister, speaks eagerly of killing Smokey and his crew. Walt listens quietly, then leads him down to the basement, telling him he wants to give him something. He presents Thao with his silver star from the Korean War, calling it a recognition of his courage for what's about to come. Thao, moved, accepts it. And then, in one swift motion, Walt steps back, slams the basement door, and locks it. Thao realizes he has been played. He pounds on the door, screaming at Walt to let him out, but Walt only speaks softly through the wood, telling him this is something he has to do alone, that Thao has a life ahead of him, and Walt will not let him throw it away. Then he walks upstairs and leaves his dog with Tao's grandmother, phoning Sue to tell her where the basement key is, so she can free her brother later.
Sue, over here! You wanna smoke? You found me!
That night, Walt drives to Spider's headquarters. The gang spills out onto the lawn, armed and ready, expecting a firefight. Walt stands before them alone, his hands empty, his face unreadable. He raises one hand and mimes firing a pistol at them, one by one, the old soldier giving them one last performance. Then, Slowly, he reaches into his jacket pocket, and every gangster tenses, certain he's drawing a weapon. Walt asks them calmly if any of them have a light. The gangsters hesitate, confused. And then, in one sudden motion, Walt jerks his hand out of his coat. The gang opens fire. Bullet after bullet tears into him as neighbors watch from their windows, witnesses to every second. Walt falls to the ground, his hand finally opening, revealing not a gun, but a lighter, a Zippo engraved with the insignia of his old army regiment. He was never armed. He never intended revenge. He intended to die in front of witnesses so that every member of Spider's gang would be arrested and put away for life, so that Thao and Sue and their family could finally live in peace. The police arrive moments later, and the gangsters are taken into custody, charged with the murder of an unarmed man.
Hey, did you hear him? Step back.
He's my friend.
Don't talk.
Officer Chang, get those people back.
A few days later, a small ceremony is held to read Walt Kowalski's will. Per Dorothy's wishes, he has left the house to the church, and the Gran Torino, that gleaming piece of himself he had guarded his whole life, is not left to his sons, nor to his granddaughter who once smugly asked what he'd do with it. It is left to Thao, the boy who once tried to steal it and became the son Walt never had.
If you can refrain from doing any of that, it's yours.
The final scene shows Thao driving along the lakeshore in the Gran Torino, Walt's dog Daisy in the passenger seat. The wind against his face, a young man carrying forward the quiet legacy of an old soldier who finally found his peace.